That's called A/B testing. There's an entire beautiful kind of statistical discipline behind that. My background's in mathematics. I love that stuff and can nerd out. Um, we don't do that at IdeaScale because that requires maintaining a lot of kind of back-end infrastructure, and it sometimes may run afoul of certain security obligations we have to our customers. The way we do that in practice is called serial A/B testing, where you launch everyone on the red button this week, and next week you launch everybody on the green button, and then you see how those two samples perform,
Right.
rather than having red and green running simultaneously. It
Yeah.
achieves the same statistical outcome, but it reduces certain potential security vulnerabilities as well as reduces the amount of technical infrastructure you need on your side to run a parallel A/B test.
That's got
Well,
to be a
no,
tricky one.
it's not actually that tricky. I mean, there is a trick to it. There's an art and a science to it, and the art and science is remove stuff people aren't using because then they don't notice it, right?
So that comes down
So,
to
and there's
analytics
an
then.
entire, yeah,
Yeah.
there's an entire like science to like figuring out which features no one's ever using and getting rid of it. And that's everyone's better off because you have less code to maintain. Some stuff that was taking up physical real estate on your screen is gone, and the customer never even notices because they were never using it in the first place.
Hi, I'm Matt Levenhagen, founder of Unified Web Design, Unified Plugins, and your host of the Builders Podcast. Here on the Builders, our goal is to uncover the first principles behind building businesses, products, and services. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. And if you find value in our content, a like, share, or review is always appreciated. Let's dive in and explore the roots of innovation and progress together. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today we are joined by Nick Jain. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. Really excited to be here today.
So Nick is a CEO of IdeaScale and a Harvard MBA and an all-around cool guy.
Wow,
I-
that's
I-
going to be hard
I-
to live up to.
I asked about, I always ask, how do you want me to introduce you before the show? And I'm like, how about just all-around cool guy? You seem pretty cool.
Thank you. I'd like to think I am.
So we're going to talk about today. So we're into season 2. This is going to be one of the first episodes in season 2, and we're pivoting or narrowing what we're going to be talking about on this show for the foreseeable future. We're talking about the actual builders, the building process, whether that's a physical product, digital product, whatever we're doing out there in the world, creating services, building services, and what that process is from concept, from inspiration to concept to validating that idea to bringing it to market, all that good stuff. But Nick's got a little different angle because I'm still fleshing out exactly how we're gonna, what we're all going to talk about in this realm. And it's interesting because we're going to kind of take more of a micro approach to this. It's something that established companies that already have products, but they have to add some feature, something, and what that looks like, adding a new feature to something that's existing and being used already. That's what we're going to talk about, right, Nick?
Yes.
Awesome. So before we get into that, just take a few more minutes and maybe do a little better job of telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll get into the topic.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO of IdeaScale. We are the largest innovation software company on the planet. Our customers are huge organizations like Comcast, the TSA, which are those guys in the blue shirts at the airport, the U.S. Post Office, Pfizer, like big media organizations. And our software is like the TikTok of ideas for them. It collects ideas on what their new product should be, what snacks they should have in the kitchen, figures out which ideas are the best, and just like in a TikTok or social media platform, the best ideas rise to the top and go viral. And we've been doing so for 15 years now, so we're pretty good at this. We're in 8 countries. And yeah, we are best in class at what we do, which is idea management and innovation software. As for me personally, this is the third. I'm a professional CEO. This is the third company I've either run or co-run. People hire me when companies either need to be turned around or taken to the next stage of growth. Prior to IdeaScale, I ran a small 2 million, or helped co-run a small $2 million men's shoe company. And prior to that, I helped run a $100 million revenue trucking company. And prior to that, I worked on Wall Street doing multi-billion-dollar private equity and hedge fund deals. So my skill set is I love building companies and making them successful. So that's why I guess I'm here today.
Yeah, you are definitely, without a doubt, a builder. Yeah, you've done it. That's a lot. I would love to dig in more into that story, but we're here to talk about a product. So what do you have in mind today? What type of product is this that we're going to talk about here, and what are we doing with it?
Sure. So I'd love to talk about IdeaScale software and how we add more features to it. So now IdeaScale software, just to summarize, it's a B2B software. It's intended for our customers are large businesses. The software has been around for 15 years. And on one hand, it's good. It means we've added a lot of cool things over the last 15 years. On the other hand, it also means we have technical debt or decisions that were good 15 years ago, but design philosophies have evolved. And so the challenge for a company like us is we're well established, customers know how our software works, and yet we need to change things constantly because the world is changing. We either need to remove stuff that people love today, they love because they're used to it, but it's actually bad design, or conversely, we need to add new features and get people excited and exploring them. And importantly, we need to be able to measure whether the stuff we're adding is a good or bad idea. So there's an entire analytics front as well that I'd love to delve into a little bit.
I love that. I mean, I think we're all probably, whether it's a social media platform like Facebook or a software we're using, even project management software, they're always adding features. You don't often see people removing features, though. That is a tricky one. That's got to be a tricky one.
It's not actually that tricky. I mean, there is a trick to it. There's an art and a science to it, and the art and science is remove stuff people aren't using because then they don't notice it, right?
So that comes down to analytics.
There's an entire like science to like figuring out which features no one's ever using and getting rid of it. And everyone's better off because you have less code to maintain. Some stuff that was taking up physical real estate on your screen is gone, and the customer never even notices because they were never using it in the first place.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, and you have to have something like we're talking software here. Within the software, you have some way to monitor what people are using. Like it's talking back to your systems and it's giving you a readout says, man, no one's touched this button over here for like 3 years. Maybe we can get rid of it.
So that's exactly right. So good software companies, actually this is true in the physical product world too. It's a little bit harder to do in the physical product world, but good software companies, particularly SaaS software companies, they have tracking software that sits behind that we can see on our side, figuring out exactly what are people clicking on, what are they not clicking on, where do people drop off their usage. And all of this anonymized data helps good software companies figure out, okay, we need to remove this, we need to change this, we need to add this. Hey, we added this last week and turns out it was actually made things worse. And that's all at least at well-run software companies, they're both collecting that data, analyzing that data, and using that data to iterate continuously. That's why you're always seeing small changes happen constantly on almost every piece of software, because at least well-run companies are doing this constantly. They're evaluating the data and then changing their software in reaction to the data.
And I think we've all seen the warning where like, you install an app or something or you do something that says, is it okay if we use your user data, or gather your user data? And so what we're saying here is that's a good thing. You should do that because that's going to help the product you're using get better, right?
Yeah, well, it depends if you trust the company. Some companies will use that data for commercial purposes. Most software companies, including us, we're not selling that data to somebody else. We're literally trying to use it to make the software better for you, the end user. So generally, like in my own personal life, I click yes, share that data because I know the company is at least for trusted companies, they're using that data to make the software experience better for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, when you're also, there's this element, and I know I'm sure that I don't know why Facebook's on my mind today, but like the Facebooks of the world, like you can kind of sample test like if you have like 100,000 users, is this something you do too, where you might roll it out to only a portion of them? at a
So,
time
so
to test a feature or something that before you rolled out
So
to
we
everybody?
don't do that on our side. That's called A/B testing, where you say like, "Hey, I'm going to give a green button to half my people and a red button to half my people, and see which one performs better." And you may have A, B, C, D testing, where you have divide your 100,000 users into 4 groups or 10 groups. That's called A/B testing. There's an entire beautiful kind of statistical discipline behind that. My background's in mathematics. I love that stuff and can nerd out. Um, we don't do that at IdeaScale because that requires maintaining a lot of kind of back-end infrastructure, and it sometimes may run afoul of certain security obligations we have to our customers.
Okay.
The way we do that in practice is called serial A/B testing, where you launch everyone on the red button this week, and next week you launch everybody on the green button, and then you see how those two samples perform,
Right.
rather than having red and green running simultaneously. It
Yeah.
achieves the same statistical outcome, but it reduces certain potential security vulnerabilities, as well as reduce the amount of technical infrastructure you need on your side to run a parallel A/B test.
Gotcha. Before I ask any more questions, because I'm going to have it because I love this stuff. So what specifically do you want to talk about? A specific feature that maybe you rolled out that would be a good example of
Sure.
how that went?
I'd love to talk about two things. One is, how do you balance three things? Because any established software company's got their existing feature set. Number two, they have the big projects that are coming out, whatever, their new modules, their entirely new feature set. Or number three, the small little cosmetic changes that they're making all the time. And you have to balance all three of those. You have to keep your existing software running, you have to add the big projects, and you have to keep the small stuff. And I'd love to chat about the process for how we're doing that at IdeaScale. And then secondly, like to give an example of one of the small features we released just a few days ago, and how we're evaluating whether that was a good idea or how we came up with that idea, how we implemented it, and how we're discovering if it was a good idea or a bad idea.
Okay. And that one was a big one or a small one?
It was a small one.
Okay. You want to talk about
So
that one first?
Yeah, let's. So you know how on most social media websites they have a big button that says like post here or submit something, right? Like you post your Instagram photo or your Facebook post. So IdeaScale, we're basically a social media platform for ideas. And so we need to make it very easy for people to submit ideas. And so we had two buttons on our website that said, they're both big orange plus buttons that help people submit ideas. You would figure when everything else is kind of grayscale or black and white or other colors, and there's one big orange button, people are going to click that button and realize, oh, duh, like this is where you submit ideas. Yeah. And then we realized, both internally and some of our customers told us, no, it's not that obvious how to submit an idea, which again is mind-blowing to me, but you have to listen to your customers. And even to me as an end user of my own software, it was like, let's make this even more obvious. So just 2 days ago, we switched the big orange, big plus, it was just a plus button. We switched it to the words submit here with a plus icon as well. So we went from just a plus to plus submit here. Okay? And now we're 2 days into this process. So we realized we had this feature, we got some customer and internal feedback that, hey, maybe this is not obvious enough. We went and built it and released it. Now we're only 2 days into this, but I'm looking at the data of like, hey, are people clicking this new button more than they did the old button? And the answer is yeah, but somewhere between 10 to 50 times more. So just that very, very simple change increased the effectiveness 10 to 50x. And again, I only have 2 days of data. We won't know for sure. For the statistics say we won't know for about 10 days. But if 2 days are any indication, we just got 10 to 50x better by making a stupid, simple change, going from a big plus button to a button that says submit here in English.
That's fantastic.
And again, it's counterintuitive because you assume everyone understands plus means share something, add something. Apparently not. And that's one of the very fascinating things about kind of releasing new features is like, number one, people miss, software companies or product designers often miss very, very basic things because they have assumptions about the world. Like for me, plus is obvious, but that may not be true to the 6 billion other people out there on the planet. So number one, you're starting from an incorrect premise. Number two, you may not actually be actively listening to your customer and internal feedback. I think we do that reasonably well, but not all companies do. Number three, once you listen to the feedback, you got to actually do it. And number four, you actually should look at the data to figure out if what you did worked or made things worse, because it could have been the opposite, that hey, it made things worse, in which case the good thing about software is just we revert. We go back to the old version.
Yeah, you always got to have the revert. I'm in web design development, and when we roll something out, there's always a clear path to go back.
Yeah.
Within seconds sometimes. Just click this button and it'll go back to what it was. That's interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say the feedback's a big part of this in collecting, because like, what do you change? So I think that's important to emphasize that, like how you collect your are you sending an email out and saying, here's a poll?
No. No, that would be very like 2005. So there's lots of ways to. Sending surveys out is a great way to piss off people because no one likes getting a million emails and the response rates to those things are terrible. Yeah. So instead, there's lots of ways to do it, but the way well-run companies do it is some sort of dynamic feedback platform. And we, in fact, use our own software. So IdeaScale, as I mentioned, is an idea submission and management software. So we actually we use our own software. As one of my colleagues says, we drink our own champagne. If you go to ideas.ideascale.com, anyone in the world, whether you're a customer, prospect, a random student who has no affiliation with IdeaScale, can say, hey, IdeaScale, here's a new feature you need to use, or here's a new feature you need to remove, or this part of your process software sucks, or hey, here's a cool idea. And then everyone else who's part of the IdeaScale community, again, anyone in the world can upvote, downvote ideas. And we have basically is out of the thousands of ideas, a couple rise to the top, and those are ones we look at and say, hey, is this a good idea? Can we do it? Does it fit into our product strategy? If yes, let's go do it. So it's a very dynamic mechanism. And the cool thing is, like, some idea that somebody posted 5 years ago may not have been relevant then, but it catches fire today because the world has changed. And then now that idea we go implement because it wasn't exciting 5 years ago, but it is exciting today.
Yeah, and there's been many times over the years where it's like you have an issue or you have a bug or what you think is a bug, or and you go to the company and like, yeah, we have this, and I've seen other companies use that type of thing where somebody submits it and then you don't have to resubmit it, you just upvote that. Me too. Say maybe a comment underneath it. Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
That's how good companies do it. Again, there's alternatives to IdeaScale, but that's one of the use cases for our software, and we literally do it. That's how we use it in house.
That's really good. Yeah, and that's really, really important. And like you said before, we can get in our own heads, and I use various examples over the years where I have built a website or done something. Like I remember I've talked about this many times, but where there was a point in time, this was like 20 years ago, where I would never have a pop-up on my website. I would never put a pop-up on my website because I don't like them, kind of like that plus sign. It's intuitive. Like it's something like, of course, I'm like, I wouldn't, like, I know what that is, or I wouldn't do that. But at the end of the day, and then you test that, and you realize in your subscriptions or your signups, 10x. You're like, wait, so I guess pop-ups are okay. So it's the same thing here. It's like intuitively that plus sign is like, of course, I know what that is. I know what that, but now you have a little bit better of a call to action, and it says, go do this thing, and people, that's a great lesson.
Mm-hmm. And again, we're 2 days into this. I'm hoping the data holds. If the data looks as awesome as it does in a week as it does over the first 2 days, that was a huge win, and it was maybe like 20 minutes of coding for someone to do. So very low effort, very high impact potentially.
Yeah, it's definitely important to have some before you even launch it, to have something to measure that. Like what you're doing is actually. There's software and stuff like, I build websites, and we can A/B test using various plugins and methodologies, where you can just serve up something 50%, to the audience that's coming in, and it cookies them and saves that, all that. But at the same time, sometimes it's as simple as I'm working with somebody right now. It's like, hey, can you put up this banner? We're going to run it for a couple weeks, and then in a couple weeks we'll either change it or whatever you're gonna. Let's see how it did. It's as simple as that. Just timing it. Just for a few weeks, let it run like you're doing. Like it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. Like 10 days. We got 10 days. We'll make a decision if this is good or bad, and then on to the next. So that's very, very good. So do you have? So that's a little change, and it's those little things sometimes though can have a big impact. Like it's this one's having. It seems minor, but. Yeah, just change your call to action or change some wording. Excuse the interruption. But I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors of the Builders Podcast, Unified Web Design and Unified Plugins. At Unified Web Design, we specialize in crafting custom websites and providing comprehensive design and development solutions to help businesses build a strong online presence. Unified Plugins offers a suite of WordPress tools designed to help you create beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive conversions. Explore how these services can elevate your digital projects by visiting unifiedwebdesign.com and unifiedplugins.com. Now back to our program. Do you have another story? You have like a big thing that you've like a whole feature
Less
you've
a
developed?
story for the big things. I don't think I have as tight and beautiful a story for the big things. I think I have a process. I think I have a good process that organizations should follow. This can apply for engineering projects or like physical things. It doesn't just have to be for software. So at IdeaScale, look, we as I mentioned, we've been around for 15 years. We have a product that works. Lots of people use it and love it. At the same time, we need to add some major features over time because our customers' needs evolve or the world evolves, and we have these small changes. So we have to balance these three things happening simultaneously. Keep the existing code running, add some new modules, and add these, what we call the quality of life changes, these small minor changes that could be big, could be small, but they take very little effort to do. That's the important thing, right? And so the way we've done it is we've actually thought about our engineering practices in those three dimensions. Keeping this, we have an entire bugs and quality assurance team that is focused on just keeping the software running, addressing any issues that come up for the core software. Next, every quarter, every 6 months or so, we figure out what are the major projects we're going to do over the next 6 months. And then we announce that both publicly and internally. So we have a public-facing roadmap. We're actually going to update that next week because we just did this meeting yesterday. We have three major projects that we're going to do. For example, we're going to entirely rebuild our reporting section on our application. We're going to add this cool AI module, and we're going to add this plugin for Microsoft Teams. Those are three big meaty projects. And what we've done is we've announced that both publicly and internally, so everyone knows what's going on. Our customers, our prospects, our employees. Secondly, we've allocated dedicated resources against those. So the engineers who are working on that, that's all they work on. That's what they get to focus on for the next 3 or 4 months. They get to make sure they work out all the bugs, not from both a technical point as well as a UX point, because a product may be technically right, but it's not fun to use, and that's a bad outcome. And then number 3, we have this team that is focused on these small quality of life changes. And the way that team works is they just have a giant queue of things that our product team or I add to. So imagine you have a list of like 100 things, and we're constantly reordering the 100 things based on what we think is most high priority. And the quality of life engineering team, they're just taking when they have time, they just take the top thing off the stack and say, like, I'm working on this. I don't care if this was the top thing last week, but it's the top thing the day I start working on it. So I'm going to pop it off. The technical term is called stack popping for any engineers of your audience who are listening. A stack is a very technical data structure, but basically you pop the top of a stack off and you begin doing whatever you need with it. And in our case, we're popping the top of the stack off and beginning developing that QL feature. And a few days later, because these are small bite-sized things that one person can do in a couple of hours, it's being released. It takes a week. It takes a couple of days to code, it takes like half a day to code, 2 or 3 days to QA and making sure it didn't break anything, and the next week's official release or update, it's built or added and deployed to everyone. And so now we have these 3 parallel processes, right? This bug team that is making sure that the existing software is just continuously working. This major project team that is doing nothing for it appears like they're doing nothing for 3 or 4 months, and then they come out with some big game-changing feature or change or module. And then you have this quality of life changing team that's every week releasing 3 to 5 changes, all of which require little effort, but some of them that could be really impactful, like that plus button we were talking about. And so that's how we're balancing all 3 of those things and making sure we're delivering both big, stupendous value to our customers, but also continuous value.
That's awesome. Because you think about that, like this isn't like a waterfall thing where it's like, or first in, first out, you got a major project that's going to hold up everything else that's behind it, like all the little things that are coming in. Yeah.
Whether in software or something else, you can't shut down the business because you have one major project going on. I think we've had
Yeah.
to do that once where it was like a super technical overhaul and everyone, external or internal, was unhappy with that. But that was essential because it was like, imagine redoing the foundation of your house. You really should not be changing the walls of your house if you're screwing around with the foundation. Get the foundation fixed. But that's pretty rare. It's okay to be working on one wall of your house and a window of your house at the same time.
That's true. Yeah. Hopefully not you though. You should focus on one at a time. You don't want your window and your door at the same time.
No, I'm a drywall guy. I know nothing about windows. I'm not going to touch windows. I will do my drywall though.
No, this is actually really, really important to understand. It's a great way to look at how to release things because I can use an example of myself too. We have this client we've had for years, and we do maintenance. We maintain their website. They got a couple e-commerce sites we help them maintain, and so there's always things happening there. And there's always little requests that come in. We need this little feature, we need that little thing, or we need this bug fixed, or this broke, and then our regular updates to it's WordPress. So there's always updates. There's always things happening. All that has to continue to happen. But this last few months, there's been this big initiative. They hired some people to do more email marketing for them, and they're doing more advertising and they're rebuilding things. So we just got a whole new homepage design that we're gonna build for them while we're doing all these other things. And I think the biggest challenge, like in which you have to figure out in your team is, well, what resource is gonna, like you said, we have a dedicated resource now that's gonna all she's gonna be doing for the next week and a half is building this homepage. And at the same time, though, we're still doing this other little project we were working on. We're still going to have to do the updates. And I think it's interesting. It's kind of like a good behind the scenes thing for what you're doing that a lot of software companies have to go through and do. Why you see things always coming out, but then they have this big thing like that happens as well in parallel. And I think that's how you have to manage it. You have to it's really challenging, though, because sometimes, and I'm sure it sounds like you have a really good system, that whole popping off thing where you have that little list of things in a backlog somewhere. I'm like, I'm just going to take that little one. And because even with other things that are kind of medium size, it's like always you have to have somebody there that's like, okay, I'm working with the client or whoever the stakeholder is, like, what is important to you? Because you're managing priorities here too. Because I'm sure there's different stakeholders that are like, I want that. I need that thing because of this thing, because we're doing this initiative over here. And that's got to be a challenge to balance too.
Well, the internal politics are obviously complex because everyone wants their project done first. But I think one of the things that we've been very thoughtful about is the product team who are making the decisions reporting directly to me. So while everyone else can demand stuff of them, no one can order them to do anything, even people who are objectively higher or more senior in the organization, because our product team is entirely independent. And their job is to figure out, okay, what needs to be done, and then dynamically reorder what needs to be done. Because just because something's number 1 on the priority list today, we may come back a week later and say, we're going to drop that to number 10. And that's fully their purview to do. And then the cool thing is once they've decided what's to do, and they modify it, the engineering team, as I said, is just popping off the top of the stack and beginning to work on that on a continuous basis. And the good news is because the priorities are dynamic and these are all small tickets, any mistake you make in prioritization, a week later is resolved because, hey, if you miss getting something done this week, guess what? It'll be done next week. It's not like it's going to be delayed by 6 months because it is blocked by some other major effort going on.
So would you say
that helps manage the emotions because no one gets too pissed off if you're delayed by a week. People get pissed off if you're delayed by 9 months for their pet project or but no one gets pissed off too much if it's like a week later.
Yeah, we're going to get to it. Yeah. So is this, would you say that you're doing like agile project management, like an agile kind of company? Because that's how I feel like when you're talking about things like things can move around, priorities can change, things can bump something because you're flexible, right?
Well, agile is a specific engineering project management approach. And we certainly use that for these smaller projects, right? We're using agile sprints to say like, okay, we're going to get this little chunk of stuff done, then we're going to reassess, and then push out the next. So we're doing that for the quality of life stuff. For our major projects, we're using much more of a traditional waterfall approach where we are thinking through, let's architect this properly. That takes a lot of time and effort up front, and then we just build it. And there's pros and cons to everyone, over the last 10 or 15 years, everyone started talking about agile. Look, agile is good at doing small, isolated, independent things that don't really affect other things. It is bad in two ways, though. Number one, it's bad because it is not good for a project that requires, like building a cathedral. You don't want to build your cathedral one tower at a time. Someone's got to have the plan for building this, Gothic, beautiful cathedral. Number two is Agile is actually really, really tough on developers from a mental and emotional point of view because you work really hard, you're expecting a break, but no, you're on to the next sprint. It's like sprinting a 400 meters and then, getting no rest and sprinting another 400 meters. Whereas if you're running a marathon, you at least know, like, look, I'm going to run 26 miles at a slow, consistent pace, and I'm not going to be dead at the end of the first 400 meters. So Agile, again, it's an underappreciated thing, but Agile really burns out people emotionally and physically because they never get a break. They're just running 120% for 2 weeks at a time, and then they run 120% again with no break.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I actually love to hear that from you because I think, like I said, it's been kind of this trendy thing to say, let's do Agile or I've seen companies try to implement it everywhere and in everything, in every realm, but it doesn't work or it's hard or they might try it and it fails. But I always see it as a framework. And like you said, every project's different, and depending on the size and scope and what you're doing, it's not just another option that might work for you or might not. But and you make an interesting point about the treadmill of Agile, like the next sprint, the next. Let's do retrospective. Let's get what did we learn? Let's go on to the next.
Yeah.
What's that?
It burns people out, unfortunately, and I think that's And look, if your engineering philosophy is we're going to burn and churn our engineers, and we're okay with that, if they all get emotionally and physically exhausted and quit, maybe you should use Agile. That's not how we think about it here. We'd like our engineers to work hard and be productive, but we don't want to, run them at 120% for 6 months and then they get pissed off and leave. That's a bad way, I think, at least for a software company to run.
Yeah, I think they appreciate you for that. So, so tell me specifically about what you guys are doing. Let's pivot here a little bit. And so you talked about your product a little bit here and what you offer. What does it all do beyond being a good place for people to put ideas?
Sure.
For the next feature.
So that's part of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Our software, I think, does three things, and it has two impacts. I'll mention what it does and then the two impacts. Number one, the three things it does. Number one, it helps you collect ideas. So you get ideas from all of your customers, your employees, your stakeholders, whoever it is, your ecosystem. So it lets you collect a diverse array of ideas at high volume in a distributed asynchronous fashion. So you can have somebody from China submitting an idea today and somebody from Japan submitting an idea a week from now and somebody from the United States submitting an idea a year from now. All of that gets in one place. Number two, it helps you rank those ideas because on one hand, it's easy to get a lot of ideas together, but number two, you have to figure out which are good ideas because not all ideas are equally good. There are some great ideas, there's some good ideas, there's some mediocre ideas, and there's some terrible ideas. So let's figure out how to prioritize and rank those ideas. That's number two. And number three, we help you move those ideas to actually becoming reality. So a bit of a project management approach or implementation approach. Those are the three things we do. Collect ideas, prioritize ideas, and help you turn ideas into reality. There's two impacts of this. Actually, three, sorry. Number one, you get a more diverse set of ideas. When you're not just talking to people who are in suits and sitting in a boardroom, but you're talking to the warehouse manager or the customer who actually eats your fast food product, you're getting a much more diverse set of ideas. That's number one. Number two, on average, you're getting a much better set of ideas. And this goes into the theory of crowdsourcing or predictive markets. When you tap thousands of people instead of 10 people, the 1,000 dumb people are in summation, smarter than the 10 really smart geniuses. There's an entire body of research around prediction markets on this. But number two, you actually increase the quality of ideas. And number three, and it's a softer point, you get people to feel more engaged. When your employees, your customers know you're actually listening to them, or they have a direct line to the CEO if their idea is good, That's really, really empowering and makes people care about the companies. It reduces employee turnover, increases customer attachment and engagement. And that's a really powerful feature of any form of engagement software. Obviously ours as well, but like any form of engagement software really gets people engaged.
Beautiful. And who's your probably ideal audience out there? Is it like larger companies that or is there a particular industry that uses this a lot?
Our paying customers tend to be very large organizations, Comcast, Pfizer, U.S. Post Office, U.S. Coast Guard, large organizations. Because what the problem they're running into is how do we generate innovation in an organization that has tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people spread over the world. That's really hard to bring ideas together. You can't have a physical suggestion box or a whiteboard or something. You need technology for this, or you need software. For smaller organizations, I think our software is actually still useful. And in fact, we give it away completely for free. So if you're an organization or team less than 100 people, our software is completely free. Just go to ideascale.com, click Get Started Free. It takes less than 2 minutes to set up, no downloads. And obviously our desire is, like, as your organization grows, or if you move to a larger organization, realize that our software is awesome. Smart. And come pay for it when you're at a larger organization.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. Okay. Well, I just noted that because I may be checking it out myself.
I would love if you did it. Again, literally takes 30 seconds to set up and use.
Love it. I'm definitely going to check it out. If somebody wants to find you on the World Wide Web, where's your website? Where do you hang out? Do you hang out on places like LinkedIn and stuff? If somebody wanted to shoot you a quick message?
Sure. So company website is spelled ideascale.com. It's above my shoulder. Great stuff there, especially I encourage people, if you're an innovation practitioner, go check out our blog. It's probably the best quality resource on the planet. It's better than Wikipedia or Harvard Business Review or McKinsey for innovation-related topics and best practices. If you want to get in touch with me personally, best way is through LinkedIn. My name is Nick Jain. I respond to 100% of messages, so feel free to DM me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Nick, and sharing those stories. And that it was really, really interesting. Thanks again.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And Unified Plugins offers tools to take your WordPress projects to the next level, helping you build beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive more conversions. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with somebody who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building with intention and creativity.